So today what we're going to try to do is recreate the effect from the Keeley Halo pedal, which is the Andy Timmons signature dual delay. And we're going to try to recreate that using the effects within the Quad Cortex. I was using the Halo recently on the video about effects loops, and I was really loving it, especially for ambient clean tones. And unfortunately, I don't own this pedal. It's on loan to me from a friend, and I got to give it back soon. So I want to see, can I recreate that effect to some extent within the Quad Cortex? And so what I've done here is I set up a pretty basic preset. I've got your Lone Star Clean into an IR loader. I have the Halo in an effects loop. You can see you're running a stereo effects loop here. And then up front, I have OD1 overdrive just to test some drive sounds as well. In terms of scenes, I've got a dry scene for the amp. It sounds like this. So that's our clean amp. Sounds really good. The Lone Star is always a good amp to use for these things. I've then got a scene with the Halo just on the clean tone. And then I have a scene that's adding the drive pedal in. And what I want to do is we're going to create similar scenes, and I'm calling it Halo here with a Q, that's recreating the Halo effect on the Quad Cortex. But let's start by kind of really listening into what the Halo is doing. So let me just start with this. There you can hear the dual delay going on. When I hit the note, you're getting those two separate delays out of it. So that's kind of the basis for our Halo. The other thing you're getting there's a swelling effect to it. And I can understand why some people, when they hear the Halo, think it's a reverb, because it's acting like a reverb in that sense. In fact, the only thing I've heard in the Quad Cortex that does that kind of swelling effect is the shimmer reverb. And there's also a little bit of drive there. So the Halo is, I think, mimicking a tape delay. So you've got that drive built in there. So there's some modulation going on. There's a little bit of a drive effect. So we need to keep that in mind. The other aspect of the Halo that I noticed is if you really dig into the attack, you'll hear that the attack is not being replicated in the delays as much. There's something kind of muting the attacks in the delays. So that says to me that we're going to need to use some kind of compression on the front end to kind of tame the attack so that our delays aren't as kind of distinct. You need a little bit more. Again, it's that swell, it's the smoothness of the delays. We're going to need to do that. So given that, I think what we're going to need to do is create kind of a wet-dry setup so that we have a dry path going out, and then we'll have a wet path with all the effects on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that up now, and we'll start to play with some effects. Okay, so I've got our preset set up to try to start to build this effect out. I'm splitting off from the main effect and going down to row 3. So our dry path will go out here, and then the wet path will be on row 3, maybe even row 4. And I did that to make sure that we have enough CPU available for whatever we want to do. I've added in an initial dual delay. I've got mix it 100% because we're on a wet path. I've got our delay times in kind of the standard Andy Timmons 380 and 500 milliseconds. I've pumped up the X feedback. I've turned on the link feedback. Again, I'm trying to get these delays to interact with each other. I did turn it on to ducking, So this is to try to kind of restrain the effect as we're playing, and then let the effect kind of phase in. So I'm trying to mimic that kind of swell a little bit. And then I also increased the mod depth a little bit and dropped some of our EQ settings for the high pass and low pass. The halo tends to be a very dark effect, in my opinion. The delay is kind of restraining a lot of the top end, so I'm trying to mimic that here. So let's go ahead and let's start by seeing if our levels are right. So here's our effect. Here's the dry path. So I can hear the dry path seems a little louder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add in a gain stage here. And this is something we're only going to use on our affected scenes. And put this up to 5. I think that'll work. So that's our delay. So let's go ahead and add in our compression up front. So I'm going to just use the 87. I'm going to be pretty aggressive with this and do that. I think with the compression, we're going to need to push the levels a little bit. So I'm going to put another gain block at the end here and use this to add a little more effect in. So the other thing about the halo effect is that it is a tape delay. So one of the things we're missing here is kind of some of that tape delay drive and the flutter and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in another delay in front here. And what we're going to do is, and the reason I didn't use a tape delay for the main thing is I wanted access to ducking and the low and high pass filter and all those other capabilities that are on the dual delay. But I'm going to put the tape delay in front of it with like a really short delay, almost make it kind of a slap back. We'll keep the mix at 50%. We'll drop the feedback down. We don't want a lot of delay from this. We're going to warm up the tone a lot. We'll just keep it down real low here. And maybe give it a little more wow. We're going to push up the drive all the way. And this is, again, we're just trying to flavor the tone going into the dual delay with some of that tape delay capability. Maybe a little more flutter. So let's hear where we are. So the one thing is there's a little too much fidelity to the delay. And it's still got that kind of swelling thing that this delay just won't do. So what I'm going to do is the only thing I know of that'll do that kind of swell on the Quad Cortex is the shimmer reverb. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add that in front of our delays. I don't want tons of reverb. I just want a little bit. And I don't want the pitch shift. And maybe a little more modulation. Let's go ahead and assign that to the scene. Let's make sure we did the same thing for the compressor. We don't want these things turning on when we're testing the halo. So let's make sure our scenes are set up cleanly. All right, so here's our halo. And here's our qualo. So I think what I want to do is, there's still not the fullness that the halo has. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to run a stereo delay. We're going to take this, we're going to copy that, we're going to go here, and we're going to paste it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift this a little bit. First off, let's reverse them. So I'm going to bring down the levels, the times by like 30 milliseconds, just to add some variation. And I'm going to reverse the left and right. So instead of 380 and 500, we've got 470 and 350. So let's hear what that sounds like. And we're pushing the level here. We've got them 25 left, 25 right. So let's compare what we got here. I think that's pretty close. Let's try with the drive. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to copy that over here. We're going to make this the drive, and we're going to turn on that. Again, here's our halo. We'll turn on the drive. I think that's pretty close. All right, let's do one final playthrough and see how close we got. Here's the halo. And here's our Quad Cortex. So I think overall, we're pretty close. I'm having a hard time getting the same fullness and warmth from the Quad Cortex effects that the Halo gives you. But keep in mind, the Halo is a $300 device that's built specifically to do this. So given that, I'm pretty happy with how we landed. So in terms of using this in a preset, obviously there's a lot of blocks involved and there's a lot of CPU involved in getting this sound. If you wanted to pare this down, what I would do is I still think you need to run a wet dry kind of signal. I would keep the compressor, I would keep the tape delay, and I would keep one of the dual delays. So I would turn the shimmer off. I would turn off one of the dual delays. You would need to pump up the levels a little bit to get the same amount of effect, but it would sound like this. And I think that's pretty close as well. So if you wanted kind of a pared down version of this, I would do that. So I hope you found this as interesting as I did to go through. It was very interesting to me to kind of really get to know the halo effect and learn what's all going on in there, at least what I think is going on. And I guess the moral of the story is you can get pretty close with the Quad Cortex effects, but if you want that specific thing, best to just go buy the pedal, put it in the effects loop. It sounds great. I don't think you'll be disappointed. But I think you can get pretty close on your preset devices. I think the key is, again, I think that compressor up front to me is an important part of it because it smooths out that effect quite a bit. So I will make this preset available on my Cortex Cloud account. A link for that's in the description. And so you can grab this preset and you can play around with it. You can pull out the pieces that you want. I hope you found this helpful. And as always, thanks for watching.